everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lindsay, also known as Animal Based Faye, and here I share all things animal-based living from a holistic perspective. So whether that means consuming super high quality nourishing foods to just elevating or optimizing your life to just live a healthier, more intentional life. So today I want to chat a little bit more about traveling and what I do to prepare for traveling. So I was diagnosed with celiac disease over 20 years ago, which I have in a different video too as well, just talking to you through my diagnosis. And when that diagnosis happened, my whole life had to change of how I needed to prepare meals and all those things from daily living. I also traveled a lot. I also had jobs that I was traveling 100% on the road to different jobs in different markets. So I had to be really savvy with how I packed my food in order to nourish my body. And again, also navigating my celiac disease and my allergy to gluten, wheat, barley, and all those things. So with that, I had a lot of practice on the road on how to pack, again, for just travel, for on the road, for flight, for international travel. So I wanted to share with you how I go about doing that. And a lot of the times, from even daily consumption to preparing for a trip, everything is all about preparation and not just leaving it up to figuring it out when you're there. Though I spend less and less time really mentally preparing for it than I used to, just because, you know, the more repetitions that you do, the more that you do it, then it just gets easier and easier and easier. And actually being animal-based and having a very few things to pack, or not cooking veggies and all these other things, it's actually a little bit more simpler than I started out. I mean, I used to carry magic bullet to just, juice my veggies and, make smoothies and a pantry of spices and things like that. No. It's very simple now. So speaking of simple, let's just get down to a simple preparation. So right now I am here in Canada and I live in Austin, Texas. And so how I prep for this trip, just giving you one example, is first, I knew how long I was going to be traveling for, and then I tend to pack a little bit extra just in case there's any delays or, just unexpected situations. So for this trip, I knew I was going to be flying super early. I got up at 4 a.m. and then I was traveling all day, essentially knowing that probably by 9, 10 p.m., maybe even a little bit later, my head would hit the pillow. So at least a full day of eating, and then knowing that I may or may not be able to go shopping or get food for the following day, I always prep a little bit extra. So there's a couple of different elements in here: domestic travel and international travel. So this is international travel. And so what I did was I prepped a full meal's worth. So for me, that's about, a pound of meat, maybe less, but protein wise, that's probably about 120 to 150 grams of protein. And I prepared anything from hard-boiled eggs to ground beef patties, and particularly elk patties is what I did. And then I had a couple of different hard-boiled eggs. And then I also prepared a plantain mash, which was really good just to have in flight, and any fruits or vegetables. Typically when you fly over to international, you don't want to make those because they won't allow it in their country. Now, depending on what country you go to, you're allowed to bring cooked meat or not. So it always depends. And then sometimes, honestly, I bring it in. So don't tell anybody that though. But I definitely have it in flight because I don't like to eat anything in the airports or anything on airplane foods. I haven't eaten on airplanes since probably for 20 years now. So I definitely avoid all of that. So those are ways that I stay nourished, and those are my meals on the plane. Or an option is you could totally fast. I mean, you can even just do a water fast. You can do just even a dry fast. I don't recommend it, but if that's something that you want to do, it's a great opportunity to do so. So there's that option. I also bring, like I said, fruit on board and just eat fruit on board because that also acts as my hydration. I don't like to drink out of plastic water bottles. So as you know, you can't bring anything liquid on the plane. So I don't do that. So how I stay hydrated is typically, well, if I'm lucky, I had a layover actually in San Francisco and they had glass water bottles by Evian. So there's very few places that will have glass water bottles at your place of destination. But because I'm particular about my water and specifically not drinking out of plastic, I'd rather just consume fruit in something that has a little bit more water in the actual food so that I can stay hydrated. Also honey, so if you do it below 3 ounces, bringing honey on board as well is also a great option too. Salt, great way to stay hydrated. So that's how I stay hydrated for like a long 24-hour travel, stay hydrated and stay nourished with my food. So then that's sort of just the travel day, right? So then if we are out of country, then I will look up prior to leaving any grocery stores that are around. And typically I'll type in things like organic grocery stores or butchers. Sometimes I'll click on butchers depending on what I want to pick up. So if it's fresh meat, I'll look at butchers around the area where I'm flying into or on my drive out to wherever I'm going to be so I can make that stop. Sometimes, depending on time, I just look at grocery store stops along the way to at least like the first thing I want to get is glass water bottles. So I'll do that. So then I pick up a ton of water and then just, fruits and also things like meats from butcher shops. So that's how I navigate, honestly, and it's really easy just to apply the same knowledge that you would at home. If you're going to search for a new grocery store, you're going to search for a new place to source your meat from or a new farm. It's the same concept. You just do it in a different area, right? And just maybe not your hometown. You apply that same concept here, but just know that when you land is a good time to just make that stop, at least to get water or just plan for the next day. You don't have to plan for the whole week, just plan for the next day so that you can wake up in the morning, eat your food, and then perhaps take a little bit more time navigating the food scene there. So that's sort of how I prepped for this trip. And then again, just preparing on the other side. Okay, maybe there are immediate stops that you can away to your destination, wherever you're going to stay, but then also maybe you do want to explore even further. So my recent trip to Vermont, which was within the country, so therefore I was able to take things. I mean, I could take things such as frozen meat on board. I've taken anywhere from, frozen like mason jars full of bone broth on the plane, even through check-in. I've taken full frozen briskets from Texas on the plane through TSA, and you don't have to check your bag. So you can even just take like a cooler bag as long as everything's frozen, even butter included. I've taken milk frozen, I've taken butter frozen, if you can freeze it, you're fine, right? Even if it is a liquid, when it's not frozen, it's totally fine. So that's kind of a little hack where if you freeze everything, you can take it on board. However, you don't, that's cool. You can take it to check-in too as well. I still freeze it, obviously, and then pack it within this temperature-controlled, insulated bag so that it stays frozen essentially to my destination, and then that's great. And so that's how I could bring food. But however, if I'm going to a place like Vermont and I've done my research beforehand and I see that there's really nice local butchers I want to stop in, or nice local farmers markets or farm stands, those are the type of things that I just sort of layer in throughout my trip and make it a fun experience, but also see if I can make it efficient on the way to my place of destination to stop there so that I can set myself up for success for a nourishing week ahead instead of, like I said, doing any convenient food options that aren't of the best quality. I don't obsess over it either. It's not something where I'm like, I have to find this or I'll never eat, or, it's something where I always happen to find it because I think it is very accessible and easy to find. However, for those of you that don't do it often, maybe it doesn't feel easy. And so I hope that this will give you some tips to make your journey easier, especially if you want to prioritize health. Again, by all means, I do love a good cultural experience. So if I'm going to other places where I do want to experience the food culture, I will be soft in some areas to just live in that moment, not to rob my tomorrow, but I will still, if I come to pasteurized dairy instead of raw dairy, but pasteurized dairy Vermont, or, raw dairy from, I don't know, Italy and Vermont, I'd rather just, maybe the pasteurized, like really local cream. So those are some of the things that, I weigh what I want to experience. And Vermont just happened to be an amazing place for dairy and all those things. So I definitely chose some really amazing dairy, but they had raw dairy, so I just win-wins, all of the things. Anyways, so again, I just scoped out local spots. I scoped out a local maple syrup maker and again, creamery, and I went to visit and I went to their local farmers market and found all like super awesome Vermont finds. So that's how I travel and locate things. So when you do want to go out and experience restaurant life and the, maybe nightlife and cultural scenes, sometimes that you want to include that in your trip too as well. So how I look for restaurants are things like farm to table or, grass-fed steakhouses, and just try to start my search there. It's not always the easiest thing. Not everything's going to pull up and populate right away, but that's how I pretty much find some super interesting gems, or even looking up, butchers. And it doesn't always have to be a Google search because sometimes those are sponsored ads and the paid ones get pushed up front, where you really want to find the more local stores like the mom and pop stores or just the local farm stores. And so if you even look at the butcher shops, they sometimes have a restaurant tacked on, which is amazing. They always tend to have great restaurants when it is in combination with butcher shops, or you can also look at their sourcing list and see their farms and their sourcing list. And sometimes, you find out who they supply and what restaurants they supply. You can navigate there. I mean, I take fun little journeys to just research and see cool places like that. It doesn't have to be that intense for you, but these are just some tips that maybe you can either run with, or you can just leave it on the table and say, Linz, I'm fine, just, you know, totally throwing this out the window and living my life on wherever I'm at, totally fine. But if this is something that interests you, I hope that this can help. And so I do this through Google, and then I also do this through Instagram too. Sometimes I'll put hashtag, where was I, Stove Vermont. So hashtag Stove Vermont, hashtag carnivore, or hashtag Stove Vermont, or hashtag grass fed. And then actually Instagram can act sort of as like a Google search tool, which is really cool, because then you find some really neat finds. Again, not pushed up in the algorithm or up in the SEO website or up in Google search engine, because it's not paid for, right? It's other really neat finds. So that's how I also navigate traveling when you want to go out and you want to go on a dining experience. And yeah, but most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, I'm cooking at home. So I find an Airbnb and my home for that stay. So I'll find an Airbnb with a kitchen. Typically I try to ask the host beforehand, hey, do you have any, you know, cast iron or stainless steel? And, you know, I have a few places that are of interest. And if that's a priority to you, which that one's kind of a major priority to me, is just making sure that I'm not cooking in plastic. But of course, you know, if you have to one day, great. Typically I'm like, do you have a grill? Do you have stainless steel or cast iron or something, just one pot to cook in that I know that I can just cook my meals in? And then go from there. You can ask them and you can message them ahead of time.
This is what I do. First and foremost, I find a space that does have a little kitchenette, which makes it really helpful. You can cook things on the go. But otherwise, here is what my fridge looks like. I did pack stuff earlier, so that is ground lamb and squash, and then I've also cooked squash too as well, that you can just kind of pack and then put in a mini fridge, because they always have that. This is also hard-boiled eggs too that I cooked prior to getting here. Picked up some fresh butchered meat from a local store, so that is awesome. I also got some more ground meat. This is really cool to have sockeye salmon. You just open it up, and this is just salmon and salt. So that is pretty cool. Some butter, of course, some lemon. You can do some like little yogurts. Just open it up, scoop it out, and like I said, I got more eggs, but of course you can boil them before you leave for the weekend, and then kind of ration it out throughout the weekend. So that is what I do when I travel.
This is kind of how I travel in a nutshell, how I prepare to travel, so that I know that I'm trying to be the healthiest I can be while I travel. And by being the healthiest that I can be while I travel, I get the most out of my experience and out of my travels, because I feel great. I feel like I normally would wherever my home base is at, because now I get to travel with my home base, and that feels super comforting. And when I return home, I don't feel like I need another vacation from my vacation. So I actually feel way more fulfilled instead of drained. So I hope these tips help you. And if you try any, or if you have any, you know, maybe travel tips or tricks of your own, please comment below. Come back, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'll be doing a little bit more of these discussions and tips and tricks that are a little bit more involved and more conversational pieces, just because it does take a lot more than, you know, 1-minute reels that you'll find on Instagram. I think that these deserve more conversations, because it excites me, and I hope it excites you too as well. So thank you so much for listening in. My name is Lindsay, also known as Animal Based Bay. So hit the subscribe bell and notification so that you can get notified the next time that I drop a video. See you next time.